Hi, and welcome to the Flute Talk podcast, where we talk about all things flute, live here on Patreon. What is Patreon? Patreon is a place for fans like you to come and support creators like us. For as little as $2 a month, you can join in on this live show once a month. Plus, we'll send you the popular 5-minute warm-up for flutists in a hurry as a gift for being so awesome. Plus, we'll give a shout out to all of our patrons in our podcast. This plus many more perks and tiers await you. So why not join us over on Patreon and help us continue to make great content? The Flute Talk podcast is also brought to you by the Flute Center of New York. The Flute Center of New York has the world's largest selection of flutes. If you need to buy a flute or piccolo, the Flute Center of New York has you covered. With our code TFC at checkout, you can try up to 3 to 4 flutes for up to 10 days, have an extended 18-month warranty, and free shipping worldwide. So be sure to go to the website flutes4sale.com. So that's flute4sale.com. Flutesforsale.com. Just be sure to use that code TFC for all those perks, and a little bit of that does go our way. Another sponsor is, well, ourselves. We have a store. If you haven't noticed yet, we have a store over at store.theflutechannel.com. We have some shirts and posters and things like that over at Teespring. So you can definitely go there and get some merch, posters, whatever you'd like that we have. It will be there. You probably notice it under our videos. If you're interested, be sure to go to store.theflutechannel.com. That helps us out immensely. So yeah, on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome to Flute Talk Podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Emily.
How's it going, Emily?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. So today we're going to talk about how to evaluate an instrument when you want to buy it. Say either it's from like Flutes in New York or from eBay or from your local shop, whatever, whether it's used or new. So just to kind of talk about the used market, because a lot of people are looking through the used market. I remember reading a bunch of comments from several people, even some people messaging us, asking us, oh, does this eBay flute, is this worthwhile? Is this that? So I'll just go step by step how I would look at things like off of eBay and stuff. And if you're not able to see the flute like firsthand, like you're buying something like a Yamaha 200 series for like $200 to $400, you want to ask, the seller rather, several questions like, has the pads ever been replaced? Has the instrument ever had an accident of any sort, even if it's a tiny drop or anything like that? Or are there any dents? Stuff like that. Also, if the pads haven't been replaced, how long has the flute been with that person? Has it been 3-4 years? Has it been 10 years? And also, how often was it used? Was it used only 1 hour a week or 1 hour a month? Or was it used every hour or once, an hour every day of the week? When those things, coincide and they say, the instrument's been played for only 1 hour, a week for 2 years, I would say the pads are still pretty good. Like the pads can still last a good year of the same type of wear and tear of that. But if you're going to be playing more, I would advise to go and get the pads replaced. For a student flute like that, you're not looking more than, the price that you paid for it to replace it with the pads. To replace the pads,
it's
usually
pretty expensive to change pads.
Student pads are pretty cheap though.
But when because we bought a student flute like that,
It was a higher model though, yeah.
Kijiji or eBay, whatever.
I think it was
$100 for a pretty good flute.
It's a 300 series, I thought. It wasn't a 200. 400, yeah.
I think it's a 481 or something like that.
So that's
pretty good flute.
That's a professional series flute,
But then the flute hadn't been played in 10 years or something like that. So the pads had kind of dried out. Was it? Does that happen?
Not really.
If you don't play an instrument, what happens? If it hasn't, like, let's say it's been left in the case for 15 years.
Depends where it's been left in a case.
Okay.
If it's left in a place that's if there was a place that has a rolling humidity where like during the seasons like summer it's humid, but then winter it's very dry. Maybe over 10 years you will see some deterioration. Also, it really just comes down to also if there's any mites or animals as well too. They can go in between the little seam of the case and go inside and eat those pads. There's all types of little things like that. If you leave it up in an attic, there's a lot of dust, a lot of mold. Mold also grows.
Oh
yeah,
God,
you can.
You don't want to breathe that.
No, you don't want to breathe in mold. No, not at all. I know the story of a flutist who had a gold flute, lived in a skyscraper, and play and left his window open and always played his flute, very hard, like professional flutist, loads of moisture inside of it, and he wouldn't clean it out and leave it on his piano, and the pads after a week or two would just be warped, and also the screws were rusting already with the reaction of the gold, the sweat, and the air from the skyscraper, from the wind, from the high winds outside. Mm-hmm. You don't notice it up there, but there is this wind that's now blowing through there that's causing a lot of problems too, with the pads, with the oxidization. So
it was probably moving that humidity all around the flute and making it
that's a full blown problem, everything's being affected, including the mechanisms and all those things. So I would always encourage, after you're playing, you swab it out, close it in the case, put it in its other case if it has a secondary case, so that nothing really gets involved inside of it. Mm-hmm. You don't need to wait for the pads to dry and stuff like that, because the pads are dry. For the most part, it's just what it is just a little bit of condensation around each one of those tone holes. But to go back to the buying part of it, you can't really negotiate on eBay, so you have to add up the cost of what everything's going to cost. So a $200 flute that does need its pads replaced with student pads, which could be the exact same price as that flute.
Pads are usually good for 10 years. Like it depends
on
how much
who.
You play.
Yeah, it depends on student flutes. I would still replace them every 2, 3, 4 years, like 2 to 4 years, if they're using it a lot. Like if you're in band and stuff, you're using it a lot, so you will get leaks, and you'd rather have those replaced, even if it's 1 or 2 pads, because you don't have to replace the whole system. With student flutes, I've wondered.
Okay. Yeah. It's different, because like with my flute, I replace every 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And I don't play as much as when I was a student, maybe. But no, I still play. It's just I don't practice as much, but I still play. But yeah.
Yeah, it really comes down to that, like because
sometimes they'll change just the pads they need to change.
Yes, because for flutes like that, when you go to a student model flute, there's a lot of like things that are not done on the system with the tone holes, in particular the pads. The pads is the most important thing you kind of want to look out for, because mechanism and rods and stuff, when somebody says there's been an accident, then you have to accumulate to that, which the costs are even more. So, but that's just for beginner flutes. These are all just beginner flute tips. When it comes to intermediate, then it's a different story, because then costs become even higher. And usually these are the questions you have to ask, especially particularly with eBay in particular, is the flute ever had an overhaul ever? Because if it hasn't, it's been 5 years, 10 years, that's going to basically be the cost of your flute. Like say you get $1,000 flute, it's going to cost you another $1,000 to get it back up to standard.
But if it's 5 years and it's an intermediate flute that's been well maintained,
it
might be okay.
Oh yeah.
But also I think sometimes when we buy a flute, we forget the maintenance costs.
Yeah, sure.
So we buy a flute, that's a deal, but then you should still go to a technician every year or every 2 years at least, just to see if there's anything. Because if you let it get worse, little problems can be fixed easily.
Yeah, totally.
But if you play on it, then it can really
it can cause even more. It can cause more problems. Yeah.
And also, so like you should have a budget for that as well, to make sure you maintain your investment.
Exactly.
And like I remember during the flute festival, Alexa she was working with a student, and she said, your flute, it's a basic flute, but if you brought it to a good technician, they could make it sound better, because like the way they make it in the factory, they go fast, but there's little things that could make it sound way better for the same flute. So like you have to keep a little bit of budget for maintenance, and especially if it's used. But even if it's new, but new, usually you have a warranty to get the first, because it moves a little bit in the first months, and you have to have little adjustments.
Totally. And new is something we'll talk about at the end, because that's really we talk about new all the time. And just, intermediate, it's really that. Usually with intermediate flutes, you come with intermediate players that are trying to sell their secondary flute. So they usually, I would say almost always, they take good care of their flute, usually. Or they get it through an inheritance or something like that. But usually they do bring it in for repairs and stuff like that annually, hopefully. But yeah, like those are certain things you definitely look out for, especially on eBay for intermediate. The rest is really kind of the same type of questions, like, has it gone through an accident? Has it, how long has it been played on? How old is it? Those are all things that warrant, if it's more than 2 years, like if it's more than the outside age of like a new flute, I would consider anything bought right away that's new until 2 years. Like not many things will go wrong when it's set to factory. It's going to be pretty good for about a year of hard playing, and then maybe a little bit more, and then you have to bring it to a repair tech. But that's the thing with flutes and any other instrument. You have to, like you said before, be prepared to have an annual budget for your flute to be repaired, because it is a machine that does wear down. All those rods and all those things that connect all the keys, every single time you press on it, they all rub against each other. There are little, fractions of a millimeter points of connection that rub and wear out, and then a technician brings those back with tools and move them all back together.
And they need to also clean it and re-oil it to make sure it's still smooth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
if you don't do it, then the mechanism can start shifting a little bit, and then after that, your flute's not worth anything.
Yeah.
I've had a student who got a very cheap flute like that, but that was it. Like, it went so far that the technician said, like, to repair it would cost more than to get a new one at this point, because it hasn't been maintained well enough.
Yeah, exactly.
But now she bought a good one.
Yeah.
She maintains it, so she's gonna have it forever. Like, it's her flute for her life.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the best thing to do.
Totally.
I think. Get a good instrument, keep it good.
Yeah. And there are like maintenance kits, but I would really advise maybe even going to a shop and asking them, what can I do to keep these things, how to keep things maintenance free a little bit. Obviously, you can't repair pads and you're still giving them business, but you never know. They might be able to help you out. But I would ask them first before buying any type of like maintenance kit. I know Yamaha has one and all these, but like you get it, but you really don't know what to do with it, because like how much oil do you really put inside a rod, because you can press and then press too much and then gets over lubricated, and then you're another you get other problems because that oil now is staying there, and any dust, anything is now connecting to it, and it's going to cause even more problems inside.
There's people that give workshops about flute maintenance.
Yep, but they're very far from each other, so it's like it's hard to say for people to which one to go to, because some of them, one's in Vermont, but then one is also in LA, and people live everywhere all over the world. So it's a hard thing to say, like to kind of advise them for that. But there are little things you can do, like make sure you have a screwdriver in case a screw does fall off or is about to fall off. I know in one of our videos, I think when you use a screwdriver, you unloosen it until you hear a click where the thread's about to connect into it. You go backwards. Then when you hear that click, you go back into that, because you can screw it in where the thread doesn't begin, and you can cause a whole threshold of problems.
It's not in line.
Yeah, because it's made machine precise, so those go exactly where it's supposed to go. Yep, it is jeweler tools. It's very much like jewelry.
So you would improvise yourself as a jeweler.
Yeah.
So you should improvise yourself as a
They even have exactly. Exactly, and they even have even in repair shops, they have jeweler eyeglasses at instrument repair shops, because really it's these small
maybe
delicate advices and stuff like that.
You should create, because you're also a repair certified repair technician. Maybe you should create an online course, like basic how to adjust, maybe clean and oil, little things like that. It's not the same as in person, because in person you can say, hey, be careful here, you put just a bit too much, and you don't have the retroaction.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Teaching a course like that online, like I said, I wouldn't give tips for oiling and all those things, because those are really things that you have to do in person, those technical type of things like that to a certain degree. Yeah. But that's really, and then after intermediate, basically, like, professional. And professional really are hard to find on eBay, but when you do and you find it for a good price, usually they're being resold by stores like Flute in New York, perhaps, maybe not, or some other places. I'm not saying they do, but others do for sure. And you can find a good deal there. And usually those are from places that are pretty reputable. Make sure you check their like eBay rating and all that stuff. And then, you want to then at that stage, or even stages below, find out what type of things you want. Do you want to have specific types of extra features? Like, do you want a flute that has an offset G to be a little bit more ergonomical? Or do you want to have a split E mechanism for an intermediate flute? Or even some beginner flutes have that too, which is this mechanism that has a curved post and vents the E key a bit better.
So it doesn't crack as
So
much.
it doesn't crack as
the
much.
third octave E. But if you don't have that, you can ask a technician to just put a donut on
Yep,
your
there's also
flute,
donuts. Yeah,
and
that's
it does the same.
Yeah, a donut's just basically a soldered piece of metal or silver usually in one of I think it's like the second G key just over there that they can do that pretty easily. And that does facilitate it better if you have an inline flute or if you have a flute that has an offset G but no split E,
Yeah.
There are some flutes like that.
But like for used flutes, place like the Flute Center of New York,
Mm-hmm.
they have a lot.
They
of
have a
used,
huge flutes. Yeah,
a lot of used flutes. So
and especially
and
there.
they have more
Yeah.
of the higher models there, I'm
Yes.
sure, than you would find on eBay.
Exactly.
Their website is flutesforsale.com.
Yeah.
So number 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there you can, and just there's also, they're all flutists there, and I do believe that they repair all the used flutes to standard before they sell it again.
Okay.
So you can definitely double check with them with that, but I would assume that they do that to keep it so that you're buying a used flute that's been put back to playable standards, and so there's a really
maybe they don't overall, but at least it's playable.
I can't say,
I
but
don't know.
yeah,
We should ask them, but yeah.
yeah, I'm sure they have a standard for sure. So you have those types of options. Evaluating any type of flute, you should always ask questions and ask those questions, like I said at the beginning.
But the difference, I would say, also is that if you buy on eBay, you buy and that's it. But if you use the Flute Center of New York, for example, you can try a couple of flutes and then send them back if you don't like them,
Yeah.
or just keep one and send the others back.
Yeah, that's right.
So that can be like this way. You can see it in person. You
Of
can
course.
see the quality of the
Yeah,
pads.
of course.
Like you can look, you can you
Yep.
can have your teacher try them as
Yep.
well, or look at them if you have a
Exactly.
teacher, and this way.
If that fits your budget, for sure.
But it all depends. Like if you're trying to get a $200 flute, or if you're investing in a higher model, you won't have the same. You won't look at the same places. Maybe
Yes.
you won't have the same. Like you'll be a bit more thorough, I guess, if you're putting $3,000 in your flute than if you're putting 200.
Yeah. So that's the thing, because like for instance, like the Flute Center in New York is really just, I think their cheapest flute's $1,000. So it's really for most people they won't be necessarily looking there. I've gotten more emails from people looking on eBay than there.
Yeah.
So it's tremendous. Like a lot of people still just go to eBay to find these types of flutes, and I would say look for flutes like. The most trustworthy flutes I've always found were like Yamaha 200 series, 300 series if you're lucky. Anything under.
They're all like Yamaha is usually very reliable. It's just that a 400 series, like we found a 400 series for $100. That was
But that was through Kijiji.
Yeah,
and so
that was
like
Kijiji, and we went with the car and got
Yeah.
it. But we
Look
were
up
able
yeah.
to look at it.
Yeah.
That was good too, because
Exactly.
we went there, looked at it, we're like, that's
Yeah,
a good
sure,
flute.
sure.
We took it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can look like Craigslist too in the United States. And Kijiji's the same thing, but here in Canada. And then go and see the flute if you can. See any uniformness. If you're able to have the flute in your hand, make sure you look against like a light so you see that there's not many dents, and then make sure the pads are not ripped. You'll pretty much notice if the pads are ripped. There's like literally like ripped paper, because the pad is made out of sometimes 2 little pieces of fish skin or a very thin membrane of some sort, usually synthetic now, and then a pad above it. So you'll see for sure a ring around the flute, which is the imprint of the flute key onto the flute tone hole. But then you'll see rips, or you'll see waves, or you might even see the pad be bent and waved. Those are usually like tell signs that you have to get that pad replaced. It's gonna leak. So when you play it in front of where you're gonna try it, it might not play. So then keep that in account to when you have to negotiate with people. Be like, well, this is this price. Like it's gonna cost me this much. Maybe we can knock off this much money.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Because you don't want to end up with a used flute that you spent $1,000 on, and then
Sure.
in the end you could have bought a new flute.
Yes, with a guarantee for so many months, and then you can do those types of things. So that's I'm just trying to remember, like, that's really, those are the main things that people should look out for. There's also like groups on Facebook too that are selling flutes too,
because you have a lot of people who play in a high school, and then their parents buy them a flute, and then
exactly
15 years later they realize, I've never touched it, and it's sitting in a you know, in a whatever.
Yeah, in the attic, whatever, in storage.
Or in storage, and taking space that,
Sure.
you know, let's just sell it for a very low price, and you can find deals. That's pretty cool.
It's a very saturated market, especially on eBay. There are a lot of used flutes every week, you know, ever since the very beginning. So I would look at those types of, I wouldn't look at like Art Lee or you know, those flutes like
they're usually very old.
They're usually pretty old, or Bundy flutes. I would really, those are ones that it's just those systems and those pads are no longer around anymore, so they're more expensive to find, like in specific shops. Some shops might carry them because, you know, bands in high school have a lot of those old flutes still, so they still have lots of stock. But I would look, you know, Gemeinhardt or Yamaha, or those types of flutes that are around a lot.
Even now, like Sonare has like cheaper models, so I'm
Powell,
like Powell, Sonare, that
they're still 1,000.
Yeah, but like I'm sure when you buy used, you can probably find deals.
Yeah,
like,
they're not as saturated in the market. They're not as saturated in the market as Yamaha. Yeah, you know, they flooded the market.
Yeah, they sell a lot, especially in schools.
Yeah.
And kids and bands already play that brand, so they tend to buy that brand again. And
so it's still pretty early on for those types of beginner premium models, I guess is what you would want to call them, the Sonares and stuff like that, which are these.
Sonare is like intermediate, I guess.
There used to be, there was like it was a solid intermediate about 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and now they have other models a little bit lower than their Sonare. Like they have other Sonare models now, from what I remember.
Okay.
So that's from Powell. You can definitely see what they have too. But I mean, the like what to look for, you know. Those are the things, and don't feel afraid to email the buyer at eBay or any of those places. So definitely, if you're going to buy something, make sure you have a point of contact so you can contact them. Like, don't just look at the picture and like, oh, it's good. No, you should still ask questions. Pictures can't tell everything. Even if you have every angle, it's not going to tell everything, because people, I've never seen a single, like, except for a shop, take detailed photos to be able to sell it properly. So definitely reach out to them and ask those types of questions about the pads, how long it's been in your possession. Is it another use that you bought from somebody else? Like, try to find out the story as much as you can so that you can assess, because anything that's out of the norm, besides it being, what you expect to be brand new, you have to add costs. And make sure to find out like what your repair techs in your area also charge. Even if before you buy a flute, like you call them up and say, how much do you charge to replace pads on a beginner flute?
Yeah, or do oiling and adjustment, or
a clean oil and adjustment. That's
for
a
this
COA.
model, because like different models, like you said, will have different prices.
Yes, that's right.
This way you kind of know what to expect.
Yes.
Because even if you don't have to do the overall right now, let's say it's in 5 years, you still want to know how much it might cost you approximately, at least,
100%, exactly. And remember that every flute maker does have different specifications to their pads and how their mechanism works and everything. Even if it's fractions of a millimeter, a Yamaha pad might not fit, Gemeinhardt pad. They might not be universal, so they might have to have another stock or order special order stock, because not every shop has all the pads, in their region. Say your one region only has Yamaha, and you bought a Sankoe.
You have a car from that's from another place, like a rare car, and
Audi or Bentley or whatever.
And then the parts are more rare, so then it's more expensive to repair than a Toyota that everyone has around. And so you buy and you're like, oh, it's the same price to buy, but is it going to be the same price to repair? That's the other thing you have to think about.
Yep, exactly. So that's about it. I think that's everything. But if you guys definitely have any comments, or be sure to leave them down below in the video. And if you're listening on the podcast, be sure to go to Anchor and leave a comment through the Anchor app. You can leave a voice message for us. If you go to the Anchor app and go to our channel, you can leave a little voice message, and we can hear, and we can air it on the next time to talk a little bit just extra about this topic. And if you have any questions about this, like I said, on YouTube, be sure to leave it down below. If you have any more questions about how to evaluate a flute, we'd be sure to, maybe we missed something,
Yeah.
and
Oh, and we
Yeah.
forgot to say, if you use if you use the Flute Center of New
Yeah.
York, please use our code TFC.
Yeah.
It gives you perks and it helps us out. So a lot of
Yeah.
people have been using it. And
Yep.
thanks so much.
Yeah, and that deal works for all over the world, and you can either go on their website, like flutes, and then the number 4 sale.com, and then yeah, you can also call them, and they're all flutists there. They can definitely set you up. Use the code TFC. You get an extended warranty. You also get to try up to 3 to 4 flutes for up to 10 days anywhere. And then you can try which ones and send all of them back, or one, or just take one and then send the other ones back, and they charge you, and that's it. And we get a commission out of that, just to be fully transparent, and that helps us out tremendously for this and the rest of the stuff we do over on the Flute Channel's YouTube page. But yeah, Flutes for Sale is a really great place to do that. They have used flutes, largest selection of used flutes, largest selection of new flutes. They have I think they have every brand, and they even have weird rare flutes too that so you can
For
definitely
collectors.
for collectors as
Yeah.
well, and that deal works out for us as well too if you want to use TFC. I believe so. I believe it's also with used flutes too. I think
so.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it for that. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to let us know down below. Like the video too.
Yeah, and also sometimes in shops around where you live, you might
Yeah.
find stuff and you can try it, and usually they have a warranty.
Yes,
And
they do.
so if you need to have it repaired, you can go to that shop.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes even if you have a flute, they can take your flute and deduct the price that they give you
Yeah.
from your flute.
If you have
And
one.
so,
Yeah.
sometimes if you're looking at getting a higher model, or it can also be something interesting.
true.
You can go and check what they have. Sometimes they have used, because they take used flutes from other people.
Yeah.
And, you can look into it and see what type of warranty they offer you and all that stuff. Just make sure they're honest people,
Yeah.
because you don't want to buy something that,
Yeah.
that you're going to,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can trade them in. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's about it for this one. This has been a pretty great podcast. We do this every month, every last Sunday of the month, over on Patreon live, and we pick up questions from there, and also pick up questions from the crowd over on the Flute Channel. And if you want to join us over there and join us live, and also just be part of the inner community that is the Flute Channel, over on Patreon, go to patreon.com/the Flute Channel, and you can donate as little as $1 a month, or you can donate any of the dollar amounts that we have for our tiers. We have a couple tiers that gives you a couple perks and stuff like that, but that goes a long way and helps us a lot. We already have, I think we're almost touching about 20 people right now on there, so that's pretty cool.
That's
and
cool.
That's awesome. And
Thanks to our patrons.
yeah, thanks to all of our patrons too. It's
Yes.
amazing. And I think that's it for now. I think by next month's podcast, you'll already be done the concerto. So we'll definitely talk about concertos and stuff maybe next time. And if you're in the Montreal area, be sure to check out the community tab. We'll leave information about buying tickets for that concerto.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
So if you do come and see me.
Yeah, you have to come and say
after,
hello and stuff like
and
that
say
definitely
hi.
after.
Yeah.
For sure, we would definitely appreciate that. And it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes.
You'll be playing a concerto with orchestra, which is
Yeah.
great. Not your
That's-
first time, which is great.
Fourth time.
Fourth time. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's very exciting. I love playing concertos.
It's super cool.
Yeah. I'm such a diva.
All right. So yeah, thanks everybody for listening in. Be sure to stay tuned for more videos, and also for the next Flute Talk podcast next month in October. Thanks everybody. See ya.
See you. Thanks.
Bye.